Well, good morning and welcome to our little seminar here on entitled YouTube You Teach. And what this seminar is really about is essentially offloading lectures out of your classroom and into homework so that you can turn the classroom into something else. And that idea goes by several different names. We'll talk about those and actually look at some videos about that, because it would be self-referentially incoherent to have a YouTube title and not have any YouTube videos used during the presentation. All right. So my name is Chris Hurd, and I know I've met most of you either today or hi. I didn't meet you as you came in, but I understand this will be recorded for posterity, and so hi to all of those who are watching this recorded. The reason that I got into this was not so much, I am a techno junkie, and I confess to that. I'm an addict, but that's not really the reason that I get into the kind of activity that I'm going to describe. Really, this is driven by my concerns for pedagogy and my desire that my teaching will rest on a solid foundation of how people learn. So I hope that I'm making strides in that direction, and I think that using the tools I'm going to describe in the way that I use them does help in that regard. So the diagram that I'm showing right now comes from D. Fink's 2003 book, Creating Significant Learning Experiences. He calls it the taxonomy of significant learning and offers it as a kind of alternative to good old Bloom's taxonomy. You notice it's set out as a wheel instead of a pyramid. So at about 1 o'clock we have foundational learning, foundational data, basic information, basic ideas, and then you go all the way around the circle clockwise until you get up around 11 o'clock to learning how to learn and being self-reflective about your own learning process. So as I began to learn more and more about learning and how learning works and how learning doesn't work, and looking at my classes through this lens, I realized that my classes were primarily living in one slice of this pie, in the basic information and ideas slice of this pie. So students would have required readings. I would give them things to read. I assigned textbook. I teach primarily, the class I teach more than any other is Religion 101. It's an Old Testament survey course. So they would read from the Bible, they would read from a textbook. Later they would read stuff that I had prepared in lieu of a textbook. But they were still just doing the basic required readings, like in many of our classes. They would come to class, and in class I would lecture for a while, supplement what they had read, usually pick out certain highlights from what they had read and expand on those in a class lecture. And then I would test them over what they had read and what they had heard to find out if they understood and remembered the information and the ideas from those sources. Okay? And they might get some practice as independent interpreters of the Bible. They might get a chance to flex their muscles a little bit with a term project or term paper, but otherwise we were really living in that upper, from your perspective, right-hand slice of this pie. And so in order to try to encompass more of this pie while still recognizing the great importance of foundational information, my students can't come to class and have a meaningful discussion about the theological concept of election unless they know the basic facts of the story of Abraham. It just doesn't work. They have no starting point. Foundational information is critical, but if I assign readings about that focus on that foundational information and then I lecture that same foundational stuff, we don't get out of that first slice of the pie. So let's take a look at somebody else's perspective on this. And if you ever want to find this again, just go to YouTube and search Inside Out Waldorf. Where is Waldorf to what? Inside out. Classroom Waldorf. Should be playing.
Oh, hi. Glad you could come by. Yeah, I heard you had an idea you wanted to share with me. Yeah, something about technology and efficiency. Well, I'm kind of busy, but well, let me know. Bring, bring, bring. Oh, just a second. Oh yeah, hi. Yeah, it's a student. What's up? Oh, yeah. You want me to answer a question that I covered in class yesterday? Yeah. Well, why don't you ask that friend of yours? He can probably help. Oh, yeah, he wasn't in class because his schedule's pretty busy. He couldn't make it, huh? Yeah, well, okay. Yeah. These students, it's the video generation. They can't focus for very long. Certainly not for a whole hour in class or something. No, they want control of their education, but they want the whole experience kind of tailored to to their own needs and to their experiences. Anyway, so bring. Oh, just a minute. Oh yeah, it's a colleague, another faculty member. Yeah, you're pretty busy. Yeah, okay. Oh, I get nervous. Anytime still when I go up and give a big lecture in front of students. It's always a lot of preparation, a lot of stress to do that. It's probably because you're repeating. You're repeating the same lecture you gave last year and everything. Well, yeah, how much time do we spend just repeating the same lecture, the same presentations to people? Yeah, me too. I really wish we had more kind of interactive one-on-one time with students or with small groups. They seem to learn better that way, but they just can't fit in coming to office hours. Yeah, me too. I wish they would learn from each other. I feel I should be more of a coach than a lecturer. Yeah, that would be great. Okay. All right. Anyways, so getting back to bring. Oh, just a minute. Oh yeah. Oh, it's the dean's office. Yeah, great. You want me and the other faculty to take a heavier teaching load? And you want us to have more students in the class? Oh wow. You say that you're talking with some industry people, and they want our students to be better group problem solvers and to communicate and to be efficient in groups, huh? Better communication. Yeah. So you want us to do more with less, huh? You say the people from industry say the same thing, that they've been efficient and have improved over the years in doing more with less, and you think the school should be able to accomplish the same thing, huh? I tell you, that's crazy. Crazy. It's impossible, I say. It's impossible. All right. Now, what was that idea you had?
And he didn't bother to edit out the going into and out of PowerPoint. Does any of that feel familiar or sound familiar? Have you ever bored yourself by repeating the same lecture twice in one day? Even if you teach multiple sections of the same course, have you ever craved more active classroom, more interaction in the classroom? Now, see, it's kind of hard for me to put myself in Brad's position. I picture Brad's classroom as active all the time because you're blocking the scenes and rehearsing and all that. But I bet there's a lot of, reading of dramas and discussing of dramas and things like that that maybe you'd like to free up some time from you talking to students talking or students interacting, things like that. So those are some of the reasons that I was motivated to try something different, to try to reduce the amount of lecturing in class. And of course, it's great irony that I'm lecturing to you about it right now, right? Although I'll never repeat this lecture because it's being videotaped. Excellent. Okay. So by trying to move lecture material out of the classroom and into the realm of homework, what I was attempting to do was to free up time in the classroom for more interactive and skill building kinds of activities. So now students' homework consists of required readings still, and also lectures, recorded video lectures at times. Sometimes podcasts, they're just audio, sometimes video, depends on what's going on. Not always will I have one of these, but it's now in that realm. And when they come to class, then I can take 10 or 15 minutes if necessary to set up an activity, and then we can get into groups, or we can do it as a big group, whatever the activity requires, and students get active in the classroom so that they explore cooperatively the ideas that they have absorbed and the information that they have retained from the readings and from the lectures, and they can actually put that to use, and then their independent projects can be a little bit more sophisticated. There's more interesting stuff for them to do than to write an essay where they reveal that they remember certain information. They now can take that information and put it in a new context because they've practiced that under my supervision in class. Now they can do it independently. And so this was very exciting to me because it makes the classroom more interactive. It makes students more active, less passive. Now, you'll notice that the 11 o'clock pie is still pink. That model didn't quite get me everywhere I wanted to be, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So here's one teacher's explanation of, there she is, how convenient.
I've been teaching.
Sorry, Katie.
I've been teaching math for the last 5 years, and this is why I flipped my classroom. This is what my classroom used to look like. I was teaching to the middle group of the class, the students that could follow along with what we were doing, and we were going through the content, while I had a group of higher level students not challenged, bored with the information, ready to move forward. And I had a struggling group of students that were not receiving enough effective remediation. They didn't have the basic content they needed to be working on the content we were currently covering, or they needed more help in order to be successful. This led to a 90% use of class time being spent on delivery and review of content. 90% of the time I was at the front of the classroom lecturing to a group of students, and I wasn't meeting all of their needs. 10% of class time was actually spent on application, which led to, depending on students, to do the application needed to be successful. They had to go home or outside of class and work on applying the concepts that I was giving out in class. This constant battle of not reaching the needs of all students and feeling the need to differentiate for all of my learners allows teachers to feel overwhelmed and ineffective because we see the need for differentiation, but there's just not enough time for effective differentiation. This called for a drastic change in how we teach. This is where flipping the classroom comes in. Now the students outside of class preload the content. They get the information they're going to need for class. They can pause, rewind, and rewatch the videos as many times as they need to. They can post questions online to their classmates or to the teacher. And it's a self-paced program where they can be remediated by going back and reviewing former topics, or they can work ahead when they've already mastered a concept and are ready to look forward. They get the content here before class, so that when they come into class, my whole classroom has now shifted, where I'm at the center of the class, working between these differentiated groups, focused on different pieces of application. I can now work between each of these groups that are moving at their own pace. This has created a 90% use of class time spent on application of the content, and 10% of class time is spent on delivery of content, when I can answer questions that have been posted or take any other questions that have come up from applying the content. Now in my classroom, all students are engaged and challenged. I have time to work with each group, give them individualized time and instruction as they need, and I can actually work between each of the groups to provide effective differentiation for all my varied groups of learners. my struggling students, my middle group of learners, and I can now extend and expand on my higher level students' prior knowledge and challenge them in the classroom. To learn more about flipping the classroom, visit the Friday Institute's website.
I'm not sure exactly what level of student, what age of student Katie teaches. I'm jealous of her class of 16 students with square tables instead of my class of 52 in stadium seating. Sometimes the architecture makes flipping the classroom or turning it inside out. Those are the two terms you'll hear, the inside out classroom or the flipped classroom. Sometimes our architecture makes that a little bit difficult. And so that's the background for what got me to the point that Alan would say, hey, can you tell others about what you're doing? So the next part of what I want to go into next is sort of some more practical stuff, but some conceptual stuff about doing this yourself. Now, I ought to add, that I am very sensitive to the irony of all this. If you were actually in my class, you would have watched that at home, right? And then we would come and we would talk about it, which is not really kind of the environment we have right at the moment, but that's awkward. But anyway, now I've put a question mark after DIY on the title of this slide. Because one wonders, is it really necessary for you to do this yourself? Or are there resources that you could draw on that already exist? Well, there are multiple perspectives on that. So back to YouTube, the font of all knowledge. Let's ask Katie what she thinks about that.
Time and time again, I get the question. Do I really need to create my own lecture videos? Can't I send my students out to watch yours? And of course you could, in the same way that you send them out to the internet to watch thousands upon thousands of lecture videos created by Khan Academy or YouTube or Brightstorm. But what you'll find, as did I, is this does not create any change in how you teach within your classroom. Because of that, I created my own lecture videos that incorporates all of these necessary components for changing how I teach within my classroom. First and foremost is trust. It's built very early on between students and teachers. In the same way that you would not trust, or I should say your students wouldn't trust a substitute teacher to deliver the information to them, they are not going to trust that someone else is giving them the information that they need to be successful in your classroom. Creating your own lecture videos incorporates that trust. Students know that their teachers took the time to put this information out there, and that is what they're going to need to know. Accountability. Creating your own lecture videos holds teachers accountable for parents, students, and admins. This does not create any kind of accountability for teachers. We don't know what information is being presented, and we can't truly make change without knowing what's being said on these videos. Facial cues, eye contact, and gesturing. While all of these videos may incorporate that, because there's no established trust with the person on the video, it is not nearly as engaging. Within my lecture videos, I can point and draw attention to different things, and then when I turn back to look at the camera, it engages students. It brings them back by creating this eye contact. It is like them having a front row seat within the classroom. A personalized education. These videos are personal. I use the language that's familiar to my classroom. These are not. The examples they use might not be exactly what I would have used in my classroom. I might not like some of them. But here, when I've created my own video lectures, I can use language that the students know and that are comfortable with within our classroom. I can say things in a particular way that I like them to be said. For example, I use something called a VIC when students are taking notes. It stands for Very Important Concept. They know, oh, this is a big deal. I need to copy this down. You're not going to find that when you outsource that information to someone else. And teacher empowerment. Very important. When creating your own lecture videos, the teacher actually publishes. They feel good about themselves, and they can impart change within their classroom. From what we've seen historically, There's no real change in how we teach within the classroom using outsourced information. But here, when I created my own lecture videos, I was able to create all of these aspects that we've just talked about. Students trusted the content because it came from me. I was accountable to parents and students for the information that I put out there. And I was actually able to personalize their education process. We know from research that the best education for students comes from highly effective teachers. This allows me to be an effective teacher within my classroom. For more information on flipping the classroom, visit the Friday Institute's website.
Okay, so Katie thinks it has to be her. Jeff disagrees. Yeah, it says 16 minutes and 25 seconds. I'm going to let it play for about 6 minutes. There's going to be some of what Jeff says here that's irrelevant to what we're talking about today, but it's kind of bookends. Like the first part and the very end are highly relevant to what we're doing. So there's a little lull in the middle, and I thought it was a little bit weird of me to download the video, edit it, crop it down, since the whole question is whether you need to do your own or do somebody else's. So, at any rate, let's listen to what Jeff has to say. Some of you might consider Jeff's vocabulary not safe for work.
This is bullshit. To quote, as Jay did, our friend Dan Gilmore, you know more than I do. Will Richardson should be up here instead of me. Well, the conversation should be happening there. To quote Jay Rosen, you are the people formerly known as the audience. Yet today, you're an audience, I'm at the lectern, and that is bullshit. What does this remind us of? Well, of course, the classroom. The lecture in the classroom, right? Where it is really a system built for an industrial age where we stamp out students all the same with only one right answer each, right? Say right. And so that assumes that all the knowledge flows from the lectern. If you don't feed it back, you're wrong, you fail. What else does this remind us of? Well, from something from Jay and I know well, the newspaper. Right? One size fits all, one way. It's the person in the newspaper who decides what questions to ask, what to answer, how to answer, in what form. You're welcome. The journalist, like the professor, becomes the speaker, the decider, to use someone else's phrase. So I say we should question the form, or more important, we should enable and encourage our students to question this form. Now, I say this all with respect to Ted. I watch many TEDs too, I like him very much. But now, having given that caveat, let me tell you about what happened during the last Mothership TED. I was tweeting that the question, has anyone ever seen?
This is the part that's somewhat irrelevant, so let me see if I can.
Professor, teacher, boss of TED, in fact, come in and challenge with word. As I was asking, what the hell did she do? Which took a long time to find out. By the way, she was making, she said, validation. It was repeat a lot. Now in news, I've argued that we can no longer afford commodified news that's already been reported, that everybody already knows, the AP story that's rewritten under my byline because my mother would be proud. Right? Ego. We in journalism have to add unique value, I argue. The same can be said, I think, of the academy. Why in the world do we need thousands upon thousands, perhaps millions of instructors over time rewriting the exact same lecture on, say, capillary action? Why do we need that in the age of MIT OpenCourseWare and in the age of YouTube? We don't. It's wasteful. So I think that educators, like journalists, as I advise journalists, need to become more curators than creators. The good stuff in great part is already out there. Why remake it except for ego? Years ago, I had this conversation with Bob Carey, who I think is still at the New School. And he said, what do I do, Jeff, in an age when MIT has these brilliant lectures online? How do I deal with that? And my suggestion was that he not compete, but that he become, if not collaborative, at least complementary. And I envisioned a digital Oxford University, where the best lectures are already there and are already made, and that he becomes the default of tutors, who can challenge people and can help them and explain things and take you through individually. So that the best lecture on capillary action may come from MIT or Stanford, but in the days of YouTube it could just be anybody out there who explains it really well and makes a video. Indeed, one of my students is here today from my entrepreneurial journalism class, Joe Filipazzo, who is starting a business called Notebooks to do just that, to pull together the best of the education that's out there and enable ranking and grading, and I hope I got it right, Joe. Notebooks.com. You notice I taught entrepreneurial journalism, which means selling. Now, the lecture does have its place to impart knowledge. It does create a standing, shared starting point, but it's not the be-all and end-all of teaching. It still has its place. But the shared lecture enables an efficiency to be found, so that you don't all have to rewrite the same thing. We need that efficiency in education today. It makes better use of precious teaching resource. It highlights and supports the best, which is important in a link economy. You link to the best. In fact, I argue in news, I'll argue the same in the academia. There now becomes an ethic that says, do what you do best and link to the rest.
Okay, that's a good place to stop with Jeff. So Jeff and Katie disagree about whether you need to DIY. Katie says, it has to be me. My Mac says, we don't want to play nice. Katie says it has to be me, because my students trust me and I can use my in-class lingo. Jeff says, do what you do best and link to the rest. Sorry to pick on Bradley, I just know him a little better than the rest of you. So if Brad is, and I don't know if Brad is a real expert on Ibsen, but if Brad is a super expert on Ibsen, maybe Brad makes some videos about Ibsen. But maybe Brad is not a super expert about Tennessee Williams and lets somebody else do that and outsources that. That's Jeff's vision. Katie says, no, that doesn't work because your students don't know that other person. Right? So this would be a great place for us to break this up a little bit and to get some reactions, but you haven't had really time to think about it. You're being asked to process this immediately without any, and that's the value of having you do it before you come to class. Especially if now in the days of courses and other learning management systems that I can quiz you before you come to class, and I can set that quiz to be due at least 12 hours before you come to class, so that I know there's at least some lead time in which you've been able to think about these things before you come to class. Now I have my own particular opinion and my own way of weighing what Katie and Jeff shared with us, and I am going to come back to that later. And by then you may have some opinions about that because you'll have had time to percolate it a little bit. But what I want to do now is take a detour into the on the basis of the supposition that you will be DIYing it, that you will be producing things yourself. How do you do it? And let me offer you some suggestions with that. So here's your DIY toolkit. And part of the DIY toolkit depends on how sophisticated you wish to be. Jeff's presentation, not very sophisticated technically. He's walking around on a stage in front of a camera, kind of like what I'm doing right now. Katie's a little bit more. She has some visuals prepared. They're just written on a whiteboard, very low tech, but she obviously has them prepared, one at a time, shove it out of the way. In both cases, you're seeing them. Do you want to be seen, or would you rather just voice over, narrate your PowerPoint presentation so that you can show different kinds of charts, animations, pictures, whatever? What do you want to do? How sophisticated do you want to get? That determines really what's in your toolbox. And you know what? I failed to launch iTunes. What a shame. Let's see if I can get my iTunes started here real quickly, because I'll show you some examples of different things that I personally have done, so that you can see sort of the range of possibilities. Okay, it doesn't like to maximize on that screen. There we go. All right, so let's start with Julius Wellhausen and the compilation of the Pentateuch. Sounds exciting.
Although many scholars contributed to the source analysis of the Pentateuch, Julius Wellhausen gets credit for putting the results in a form that gained broad acceptance in the 19th and 20th centuries. Let's take a look at his ideas. In
Okay, so obviously
a
this...
French physician named Jean Astruc published a book suggesting that Moses had
Pause.
written the book of Genesis.
Actually, I'm trying to turn it off. Thanks. So, obviously, this is just a keynote presentation. You could do the same thing with PowerPoint that I've narrated over the top of and exported in a video format and uploaded to iTunes U. Very, very simple. We can get a little bit more sophisticated by adding video. And this startup sequence is too long. 20 seconds, that's as long as a TV show, that's too long. But you'll notice the entire video is only 5 minutes long. I gotta cut that down. A lot of these need to be remastered for various reasons.
Do you know this man? Chances are you recognized my little reproduction of Michelangelo's statue of David. And chances are that you know something about the story upon which that is based, the story of David fighting the Philistine champion Goliath.
Okay, so that's just me talking into a video camera in my office. The background chatter that you hear is the class going on next door. So there's some environmental things to think about, and eventually, let's see, is it always just me talking? Well, occasionally I put in some slides when I quoted something. And if we want to get even more sophisticated, if you feel like, you know, let's do something really cool.
In which Judah and Babylon seem to be allied, or at least friendly. And to arrive in just a few pages that
You can use green screen technology to change the background and do all sorts of fun stuff. So you can get as sophisticated or not as you want. Like I said, a lot of these things need to be remastered. One of the things when you do start doing it yourself is that there's a learning curve to all of this, and the fancier you try to be, the more you're going to have to do some advanced preparation. In my videos, my head is all wrong. The proportions of my head are wrong because there were some of the videos I made without fully understanding aspect ratio and how to control the aspect ratio in my, I understood what aspect ratio was, but how to control it when I imported the video from my camera into my software and so on. All right, so let's go back to this toolkit. All right, some things we want in our DIY toolkit. Let's start with hardware. I'm assuming that everybody has a computer supplied to you by Pepperdine University or purchased by yourself, whatever. We don't have, as far as I know, a production studio here at Pepperdine University, although that would be a desideratum. But all you really need is a modern computer, because those usually have cameras and microphones already built in, especially if it's a laptop. But as far as external stuff goes, you can do the simple level of this simply with a good microphone and your computer. If all you want to do is narrate over the top of PowerPoint or Keynote, very minimal kind of investment in hardware. I would recommend a good external microphone. I happen to use this one, which is called a Zoom H2. You have to have a little bit of a high tolerance for learning on your own with the Zoom H2 because the manual's not that great. Somewhere around here there is a blue snowball sitting on a desk way back there in the back. Blue microphones, and Blue is the manufacturer. Their Snowball and Yeti microphones are very very popular. And you want to investigate what's called the polar pattern of the microphone, depending on what you are going to record. If you want to record a seminar or an interview where it's you talking to somebody across the table or you talking to a group of students around the table, you need to make sure that, that the microphone supports a polar pattern that is 360 degrees or something reasonably approximating 360 degrees. That's why I like my, my Zoom. It has 4 polar patterns that I can use. I can use 90 degrees in front, 120 degrees, 60 front, 60 back. I can use 2-channel or 4-channel surround sound. So it gives me lots of options. I can record a seminar, I can record a lecture, depending on what I need. The next step up is that you would want a video camera. The camera that I use is a Canon, but you know, you can use any brand you want. One of the things I would recommend, I think maybe I don't even have to recommend this anymore because of changes in technology, but you want one that's either got an onboard hard drive or that uses SD cards. You don't want to mess with, I mean, unless you're doing, you don't want to mess with film for stuff like we're doing, because you want it to get it into your computer really fast and with a minimum of fuss and a minimum of cabling. So the most convenient thing is if you have an SD card that you can just pop out of the camera and pop into your computer, or they all come these days with USB cables or FireWire cables. All right, so that's the basic hardware, and with that in your computer, you've got a little recording studio right there, as long as you also have space where the ambient noise is relatively limited. Now, as I said, we were at this point in time, at the date of recording, do not have a production studio down here at Seaver in the Central Campus, or any that is really for professors to use on a regular basis, which is a little bit sad. So you're going to end up kind of doing this on your own, at least at first. I put that in there for, you know, for Jerry so that he knows to create a production studio. But the biggest problem I've run into is sound bleed from other rooms. And so you want to be thinking about that. The easy way to deal with that is just make sure you're doing it at a time when nobody's next door teaching a class, if you have that problem in your particular context, as we do in Appleby Center. Now, that may be inconvenient. It may mean you have to do it late at night. But if your office doesn't have an external window, who cares? It doesn't matter what time of day it is. Now, second thing, fluorescent lights give you a 60 millihertz hum, which is annoying. All right, so you probably want to get rid of your, turn off your fluorescent lights and turn on an incandescent light, and that can be a little bit tricky figuring out how to light your office for video. Brad, help! So, you know, that can be a little bit awkward if you're trying to do video. Obviously, that doesn't matter if all you're doing is voiceover narration. So in terms of software, again, most of you already have on your computer some sort of presentation tool, like either Keynote if you use a Mac or PowerPoint if you use a PC. And boy, doing this is just so easy. All you do is prepare whatever slides you want to use, and both of these tools have a narration feature built in. So for, let me show you, for Keynote, which is my preference, for Keynote, what I do is if I want to record this, I would actually make my Zoom record. Right now it's in standby mode. Right? So what I'm going to do is pull up the inspector. Hal, do any of you use Keynote? Are you all PowerPoint people? Garrett is a Keynote person. Garrett is among the elect. The rest of you, sorry. For Keynote, all I do is go to the document inspector, and under audio, there's this little button that says record. And when I do this, it will start recording. So, among the things you're going to want in your DIY toolkit, in terms of software, is some kind of presentation tool. Now, most of you already use PowerPoint or Keynote, depending on whether you use a PC or a Mac. I know, I said all this just a moment ago. I just want to demonstrate to you how this works. Now, when I escape and get out of here, now I can preview that audio.
So, among the things you're going to want.
All right, and if I play the presentation now.
So, among the things you're going to want in your DIY
Bada boom, bada bing, right?
software
It's all that easy. And then with Keynote, you can use the share menu to export it. Bounce to a QuickTime movie. You do need to know which formats to use. I'm not going to try to go over that right now, not that it would be easy to remember. You can get, if you're exporting to iTunes U, for example, get the specs from Michael Dula. If you're exporting to YouTube, get the specs from the YouTube help page. But it's just super easy to do. You just set the settings, hit next, give it a file name, go, and then you upload it. And if you're uploading to iTunes U, you just email it to Michael and let him upload it. It's really that simple. In PowerPoint, I forgot to preload PowerPoint, sorry, and that takes a long time. But I do want to show you how to do it in PowerPoint. Okay, so while we're waiting for PowerPoint, some other things you might want in your software toolbox would be a screen capture tool. I don't know if you use any, well, you're a director, right? You don't teach composing, but if you did, you might want to use some kind of composing software like Finale or those that do the musical layout, right? And you might want to show students how to do it. I have some videos on YouTube about how to type Hebrew on a Mac and how to get your text into courses if you're using an iPad. That's been fixed with the mobile skin now for courses, but you know, it's not immediately evident how to type Hebrew on a Mac, or Graciela, maybe students don't know how to do the accent marks, the proper accent marks, or the iña, or how to create those special characters that Spanish uses that English doesn't use. So you might want a screen capture tool that just records what you're doing on the screen. My personal preference of the tool I use is called I Show You. I show and then the letter U. Just I Show You. And it works just fine. PowerPoint is now loaded, so let me load my PowerPoint version of this presentation. It's good to have audio editors and video editors if you've got to get more sophisticated. And by an audio editor, I mean something that lets you look at the waveform, lets you clip out pieces, lets you shrink, crop off parts of your audio that you don't really need. I personally use one called Fission for the Mac. It's not very expensive. For a video editor, that's a little more high-end. You could use things like Windows Movie Maker or iMovie, things that are pre-bundled on the machine. I personally prefer to use Final Cut Express. It's not as expensive as the full-blown Final Cut, which they use over in Hollywood, but it has many of the same features. So, and it's relatively easy to use. The other real alternative is Adobe Premiere, which I find gives me fits. So that's my personal experience. For PowerPoint, when we record our presentation, see if I can remember exactly how to do this. Oh yeah, sorry, you can't see the menu bar. There is a selection on the menu bar, which is Record Slideshow, from the Slideshow menu. So those of you that use PowerPoint will have seen the Slideshow menu. If I choose Record Slideshow, it starts playing the slideshow. Yeah, I'm still inputting here. All right, so welcome to this installment of the Instructional Technology Faculty Speaker Series, where I, Chris Hurd, will share with you some ideas under the heading YouTube You Teach. All right, now that was just for show. PowerPoint is asking me, the total time for this slide was 18 seconds. Do I want to save my slide timing? So I'm going to say yes. And now, pointer, where are you, pointer? And now if I look at the slideshow here, those of you that are familiar with PowerPoint, you'll see that My first slide now has a little sound file that has been added. PowerPoint recorded the sound file and put it on there. One of the things for both, if you're going to do this, for both Keynote and PowerPoint, really important, shut up during the slide transition. Because the tools are not very good at slicing your audio. So if you talk over the transition between slides, you're very likely to lose some audio right there, or to get a very awkward break. So stop, let the slide transition, and then start talking again. Keynote's better about this than PowerPoint because Keynote produces one big sound file that it embeds in itself, whereas PowerPoint slices it up slide by slide. Okay, back to Keynote and back to our toolkit. So those are that's the software tools that one will want. Oh, it's going to want to.
So, among the things you're going to want in your DIY toolkit in terms of software is some kind of presentation.
Sorry. Let's clear the recording and go on to some best practices real quick. All right, so with those things in your toolkit, you're ready to rock and roll. All you now have to do is learn how to use the software, learn the appropriate frame rates and all that kind of good stuff, most of which is automated for you in the software, and then you can get started. So some suggestions in terms of best practices. Thanks for coming, Tony. Number one, keep it short and keep it lively. And I'm not really, my own videos are not necessarily a good example of this. This is one of the reasons why I want to reduce some of them, so that I'm talking more like I'm talking to you now, rather than reading a script of a very formal lecture, which is beautifully written, but isn't really an interactive presentation, if you know what I mean. So keep it short, keep it lively. It used to be that YouTube imposed this on you because there was a 10-minute limit. And you could not go past 10 minutes. You had to break it up into part 1, part 2, and so on. That limit has been extended. But still, I say keep it short, keep it lively. Also, attend to copyright status. Be really careful about stuff that you put in your videos and your slideshows. Now, if you're filming yourself, no issues arise. But if you start displaying photos of important people, or even the covers of books, things like that, you got to be sensitive to copyright issues, both of the imported materials and of your own materials. Now, real quickly, let me give you some pointers on where to find stuff that has already been licensed for you, should you wish to illustrate this. So, for attending to the copyright of imported materials, for photos and videos, for images, photos and videos, four of the sources that I regularly check when I want some kind of stock footage or stock image are Fotolia, iStockPhoto, Shutterstock, and Stock.exchange. Now that's not a URL, that's the name. So don't type that into the address bar, type that into Google. Stock.exchange. The Stock.exchange is free. There's no charge for that. You just have to sign up. That's yay! But of course, their library is smaller than the others. I personally tend to use iStockPhoto. You might also look at clipart.com, although that tends to be cheesy. So if you want good photography, good images, you want to go to a place more like these. And there are others, but they get more expensive. Corbis Images, Getty Images. Now you're talking big bucks. For audio, you heard some audio at the beginning of my iTunes U videos. Places to get some audio. Audio Sparks, if you just want short tags or sound effects, it's a good place for those. Obviously, I didn't mention before, but the $sign means you have to pay for their services. There's a place called Free Music Archive, which, as it says, has free music, but not very much. A place called Incompetech. That name somehow just doesn't create, a great feeling of confidence, but it's a fellow who composes music for film scores and TV scores, and he's put some stuff out for free on the internet. iStockPhoto also has audio. I'm not sure about the other photo and video sources that I mentioned. JewelBeat. I listed JewelBeat not because it's so great, but it's only 99 cents per track. So it's iTunes style pricing, and a place called Music Loops. which is great for background music of different moods. And then also make sure you educate yourself about fair use. This is something that we increasingly have to do, is make sure that we are using things properly and setting good examples for our students. There's something quite inconsistent about penalizing our students for plagiarism, while at the same time we're using copyrighted materials inappropriately in our PowerPoint slideshows, especially if we're uploading those somewhere. So we need to educate ourselves and attend to that. And one of the places I find very helpful for this is the centerforsocialmedia.org/fair-use, and then explore the resources that they have available. That's the American University. So attend to to the copyright status of imported material and of the material that you are producing. In the very act of producing it, you are producing a new work of copyrighted material, and it's to everybody's advantage if you go ahead and make the status of that clear to everyone. Now you can see in the lower right-hand corner, my preferred way of doing that is by using Creative Commons licensing, and my preferred Creative Commons license is the one that's called Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike, which means that if somebody wants to reuse stuff, if this gets onto YouTube somehow, somebody wants to reuse stuff that I've created, then that's fine as long as there's an acknowledgement of who created it. There's no charge for it, and this same license goes along with the new work that's created from remixing this old work. There's also one that I frequently use is the Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivative Works, which means that anybody who wants to can redistribute my show but can't change it or remix it into something else. I put that one on works where I'm using licensed material from somewhere else. So if I have an image in a video or slideshow or background that comes from iStock Photo or something like that, I always mark it with a No Derivative Works license to acknowledge that I don't have the right to sub-license that other video that I have used. I've used it properly, but then to have somebody else use it from me, that would be improper. And let's see, and then finally, attempt accessibility. This is an area where I really must get better. And it's increasingly important that we make sure that any videos or audio materials that we publish online, especially if they are required readings or viewings or listenings for students, we need to do everything within our power, and I have not done this, and that's part of the reason why I need to redo my videos, is to make sure that people with visual and auditory handicaps have equal access to that material as much as possible. So one of the things I need desperately to do is closed caption my videos and make transcripts of my podcasts, so that blind or deaf students will have relatively equal access to those materials. Now, what about delivery? How can we deliver this stuff to our students? If you need to keep it secure, in other words, you need only your students to have access to this, Courses is a good way to do that. You can upload it into your resources folder, I believe, and then link to it from other tools. Mark is more of an expert on exactly how you would do that than I. I've chosen not to do that. What I've chosen to do is to go through iTunes U for materials that I want to keep Pepperdine only, and go YouTube for stuff that I am comfortable with the whole world seeing. Because then I can embed the YouTube video into courses if I want to do that, and I have in fact done that in the past. So students would scroll down, they'd see a block of text, and then they'd see a video, and then they'd see another block of text and another video. iTunes U, you want to interface with Michael Dula about that, and YouTube, that's the ultimate sort of do-it-yourself, make yourself an internet star kind of thing, and just follow the instructions on YouTube. It's so easy. You punch a couple of buttons, find the file on your computer, wait a few minutes, and it's done. And YouTube is social, so people can comment on it, and that's kind of fun. It's interesting how many people are passionate about the relationship between Assyrians and Chaldeans in 600 BC. You wouldn't believe. It's amazing. ethnic people who consider themselves ethnic Chaldeans are kind of hot on that. Anyway, these are the three delivery systems that I use. So back to my pedagogy wheel. And I am now going to put my cards on the table and tell you whether I agree with Katie or Jeff about the DIY issue. Now, having talked about the DIY toolkit, if we had more time, I would ask you what you think first. But it's like 4 minutes until we're supposed to stop. So I side with Jeff. Not because Jeff is an old white guy, but because of the pie at 11 o'clock. And so it's a little bit ironic that I've spent the last hour talking to you about this thing about making your own videos and using them as homework, because most recently I'm actually drifting away from doing that and toward more linking to other people's videos. Although at the time I made these videos, I didn't think that any existed that did that covered the same topics. I had not found any that covered the same topics. Some of them existed and were inaccessible to students because they were behind a paywall or something, and I was big on open access, all right? But what I've actually done, and this is an odd confession coming at the end of this particular presentation, this semester I've actually removed all the links to my YouTube videos from my pages in courses that give students preparation instructions for what to do. I no longer assign my own videos. What I now do is assign students to find out as much as they can about topic X. And I make sure that the way I've tagged my videos in Google brings them up high at the top of a Google search. So if you go and you search for Wellhausen documentary hypothesis and you use the Google video search, mine are going to come up somewhere near the top. Because I'm trying to turn that top pie green, so that I'm not just offloading lectures into homework, I'm also offloading the responsibility for determining which lectures are relevant into homework. Now, I hold students' hands with that at the beginning of the semester. And I give them ways to find my materials and other relevant materials that are slightly scavenger hunty within courses. They have cheat codes that they can enter into a quiz in courses and get a link if they are having a hard time finding appropriate relevant materials. What I'm trying to do is teach them information literacy. At the same time that I also want to deliver this kind of stuff, not just to my students at Pepperdine, but to the whole world, as I have these delusions, of grandeur. All right, so we have reached the end of our time. That is all I can really take time to say about this particular topic of teaching with videos and with lectures used as homework, not as enhancements within the classroom. I would love to talk with you about this more, not on camera right now because our time is up, but individually. Alan and Mark would be happy to help you with the technical side of this, as would your divisional or departmental tech liaisons. Is probably the first place to go with that kind of stuff. So thanks very much for coming. I appreciate the turnout, appreciate your kind attention, and we'll continue this conversation offline.